welcome to today's National Matters. I am your pastor, Pastor Moses Chiluba, the host, of course, of this program. In the studio today, I have the Honorable Member of Parliament for LUENA, and he is with me, Mr. MUBITA ANAKOKA. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Pastor Chiluba, and thank you for the invitation.
I'm permanently blessed.
Thank you.
First things first. How is the family? How big is your family?
My family is very big, and the family is doing fine, and we thank God. My children, I have got 3 girls and 1 boy. The last one is in university now, so I might be looking with a lot of black hair. But that's giving away my age.
Yeah. And for how long have you been married?
I was actually married for 17 years, from 1995. Unfortunately, my spouse was called by the Lord in 2014. Oh, and I haven't reconsidered as yet. So we've been managing with being a single father, and we thank God we've come this far. In fact, the political journey is something that I started with my late wife. Unfortunately, she didn't live to see it come to fruition.
In fact, after the family, I want to ask how you started your political journey. When you completed school, who pushed you into this political arena, whether you've had this dream from childhood?
Indeed.
Yeah.
I think I got exposed to politics at a very, very young age. My father was actually once a councillor. In the UDP days, Mr. ANAKOKA Senior, Mr. Charles ANAKOKA Luyanga. He was a councillor for Mavili Ward. And growing up in Mushitwambumu, we got exposed to politics in the sense that whenever there was political activity in UNIP days, I would see many political figures coming to my father's, to our place. And I probably just found myself taking keen interest in the discussions. I would always be nearby. And so I think it got engraved in my head that one day I probably should do this. But fast forward, after I completed school, I did professional accounting at the then Chingola School of Accounts in Chingola. Then started working in the mines, and then eventually I thought working in the office probably wasn't my thing. I changed sectors and went into teaching accounting. So I started teaching at ZICAS. Before ZICAS, I was at Zamim. And prior to that, I was actually teaching part-time even as I was working. So I realized I think this is what I love doing. So I started lecturing. My political journey really took off just when I was lecturing at Zamim. When the late Anderson Mazoka decided to form the UPND, you will recall that it was after the violent issues in the MMD where he wanted to become the branch chairman, and the MMD was throwing all sorts of spanner in the works, and he decided he wanted to form a party. I was fortunate enough just to be in the right place at the right time. I was working with one old man, may his soul rest in peace, Mr. Charles Munansangu, who was a relative to Mr. Mazoka. And he was the bazaar that time at Samim. And when Mr. Mazoka came to consult him on this decision, Mr. Mwananzangu thought he had heard me talking more like a politician from our interaction. Okay, so he thought he should introduce me to Mr. Mwananzangu, to Mr. Mazoka. He called me and said, this is Mr. Mazoka. I said, wow, I know the man, but I've never met him. We just read about him in the newspapers. Then he said, he is considering forming a political party. And I see you like talking politics a lot of time. So if you would like to join politics, here's an opportunity. So that's how I got involved in the UPND.
Right from inception?
Right from inception. However, after the 2001 elections, I actually left the country. After that very bitter experience with the elections, where we came so close. In fact, we believe that we were so unfairly treated as UPND. So I had an opportunity to go and continue with my professional career outside the country. So I went to work in Lesotho. And fast forward, 14 years later of being in Lesotho, I decided I need to get back home. And I came back home and went to the constituents, spoke to the people that I would like to participate in politics in the country. They indicated, at that point you recall that LUENA was actually held by ADD. Honorable Milupi had held it as an independent, and then he formed a party, ADD. And then later on, the seat was held by Honorable Gertrude Menda, who is the current UPND Deputy Secretary General. So the people said, yeah.
Before Boy Menda, there was another vibrant man.
Before Honorable Milupi, there was Honorable Siveta. Yes. Yeah. There was Honorable Sveta. Yeah. So from Honorable Sveta came
on. You see how I know your constituency?
I can see. You have it by the fingertips. Yes. So Honorable Milupi won it as an independent, and then along the way he formed the party, and then he contested the presidential elections in 2011. And at that point, Honorable Imenda contested the seat at parliamentary level. So she's the one who held it from 2011 to 2016. So I came back and the people said, yeah, I want you to contest, but you have to contest on ADD. So I actually contested the elections on ADD in 2016. Yes, and you
won the seat?
No, I didn't win. It was won by my brother, Honorable Mulanda Kundoti. Oh. Yes, we held it from 2016 to 2021. Yeah. There was even at that point a working arrangement between UPND and ADD, so I didn't see any distinction since the people wanted me to participate. So 2021, everything now is history. I contested it now on the UPND ticket. And this is my first time in Parliament. Yes, having made the first attempt in 2016. So that's how we got this far.
It's gratifying to know, everyone in these political parties, they claim ownership. No, we are founding members. We are founding members.
Indeed.
It's good to know that I'm talking to one of the founding members of UPND, and you don't even blow your trumpet.
I think once a party is formed, it is for the people. Yes, because it doesn't matter whether you were there 1 week after the party was formed and others come in 20 years after the party is formed. It's exactly what the party is formed to do. It's one organization that you form and you don't own. And it has to be owned by the members.
Absolutely.
Yes, so I think those who were privileged to be there when it started, and those who are joining now as we are speaking should feel the same level of ownership. Otherwise, if people don't get to own the vision, it means you haven't successfully sold the vision. And I think may the soul of Anderson Kambera Mazoka rest in peace. We are now living the testimony of the vision that he gave birth to. And President Hakainde just took it from one level to another level altogether. Yes.
I want to ask, Honorable, we are talking about development.
Yes.
And we generally talk about corruption.
Indeed.
And all these things that are coming up. And I'm so glad that you are comfortable that we talk about this, because being a Zambian, I really want to see this nation develop. And I can tell you that I used to travel a lot when I was a youth, going to America, Europe, preaching, but there came a time, if I can tell you, for the past 18 years, I've not been to America. And 3 or 4 years ago, my wife and I were forced to go and preach in UK. But
Wonderful.
I told them that I've got a constituency.
The Zambian constituency.
The Zambian constituency.
Yes.
I'm very passionate about 2 things.
Yes.
Development and the spiritual warfare of our people.
Wonderful.
Because God is not a God of partiality.
No.
What He can do for Americans, He can do it for
Zambians.
us Zambians and any other person. From the political platform, how would you rate UNIP, MMD, PF, before we come to UPND? Because you are still in kindergarten.
Thank you.
How would you rate these 3
Yes.
past governments? Where was corruption rampant?
Interesting. First of all, I want to say I'm happy actually that as a man of the cloth, you have also taken issues to do with governance and development of the nation as part of your calling. Because sometimes we have many men and women of the cloth who want to think that religion and the well-being of the people are mutually exclusive of each other, that they do not interact, when in fact it is the interests of the people, physically and spiritually, that you should be interested in. So I'm very excited to see that you have always taken this line.
Amen.
Talking about rating the parties that have been in charge of the affairs of this nation, starting with UNIP. UNIP had put in place very strong systems. I know I was a young man, a small boy, was born in UNIP, and UNIP only left power when I was completing, I just completed my grade 12.
Really?
Yes, I left school in 1990, and UNIP was kicked out of power in 1991. UNIP had strong systems in place.
Absolutely.
To fight corruption. Then the MMD came into power. The liberalization of the economy and the increased participation by citizens doing business with the government opened a lot of opportunities. Unfortunately, our legal framework did not probably grow at the same pace to ensure that corruption was kept under watch. Institutions like the ACC, DEC were there in name, but the amount of work that needed to be done was so much that I think, in my view, eventually they got overwhelmed. And corruption began to take root in the society. But efforts were still being made to try and fight corruption. Now, the MMD, having been in power for about 20 years or so, had different presidents coming in and going out. Unfortunately, the second MMD president died in office. And when President Mwanawasa was in office, he visibly demonstrated the desire to nip corruption in the bud, put in place the task force on corruption. I know the debate has been raging as to whether it was the best way to go or not. But I think it's because he saw corruption as an emergence that needed an emergence approach, hence the establishment of the task force. Unfortunately, when he was called by the Lord, everything he had succeeded in putting in place, the gains that we had achieved as a nation, were quickly reversed. RB took over, MMD had at that point become less popular in the nation. So I think the balance that President RB had to maintain, and you recall that he came in and needed to focus on winning an election himself. So he didn't really have sufficient time to stamp his authority on the systems of governance. Then he lost power and MMD was removed from power. The PF, President Satan, made the right noises when he took over government. Unfortunately, one would also say he equally didn't have sufficient time to stamp his authority on the governance systems, because I think, as we all know, that it wasn't for a very long time that he was actually all himself, governing the nation with all his energy, as he did when he was campaigning for elections, when his health started failing him, and unfortunately he too was called to the Lord. Then came a new crop of leaders in PF. I think all genuine and honest Zambians would agree that the floodgates opened in terms of corruption. President Lungu found himself in a difficult situation that when he took over in 2015 to 2016, he was in a situation where you're campaigning for elections now, and as soon as you get into office again, you have to start campaigning, because it was just 1 year down the line that again there was going to be elections in 2016. But after 2016, I think there was an opportunity to pause and say, what do we do to fight this scourge? Unfortunately, I think there wasn't sufficient focus on strengthening the systems. And so we got to the level of lawlessness that we witnessed in terms of corruption. And that's why the Zambians spoke so strongly and decisively in 2021 to say this and no further. Hence, we were thrown into the swimming pool ourselves. That was UPND.
Now that you're in the swimming pool.
Yes. Now that we're in the swimming pool.
Yeah. Is the water clean?
Indeed, we have found the water very muddy. Very muddy indeed. You just have to pick any report by the Auditor General. It tells you how much breakdown there was in terms of governance. And when there is a breakdown of governance and systems, corruption thrives. The President Hakainde, had made a commitment that he was going to lead a government that will apply a zero-tolerance policy on corruption. And I think, without beating our own drums, I think the nation has seen that there is no sacred cow. Yes. The President has declared that the law enforcement agencies should work professionally. And he has also made sure that in fighting this corruption, people's dignity and human rights are respected. Hence, he has constantly reminded the law enforcement agencies that do not arrest anybody if you haven't done your investigations. To ensure that you, and also when you arrest somebody, if the law permits to give them police bond, give them police bond. Because the idea is not to punish people before they are convicted. The idea is where there's reasonable suspicion, as per the law enforcement agents, their own standards, they should investigate, give an opportunity to the individual to account or to answer to the charges, and then they are either convicted or acquitted. And not too long ago, when the president was addressing Parliament, he went further to remind basically the justice system now as a whole. And he said these cases, especially the corruption cases, we should do everything possible to make sure that they are disposed of within a period of 90 days. So that you do not have these acts of corruption hanging over the neck of an individual for 2-3 years with the cases not being completed. All that is being done to ensure that, one, we don't find ourselves in a situation where you lose track of which cases, you know, and the society loses confidence in the effectiveness of the fight against corruption. Hence the need to close the cases quickly. And secondly, people that are charged are given a very quick opportunity to clear their names. Because the old adage says justice delayed is justice denied.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when you are facing corruption charges, you basically have your life coming to a standstill. And that should not be allowed to go on indefinitely. So I think the fight against corruption is now being well oiled bit by bit. I don't think we are there 100% because there is always room for improvement. But I think the political will is finally there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Honorable, I want to ask the question. Is the political fight in this nation segregative, or it cutters across board?
I'm happy you've raised that question. I have heard people saying that they are being persecuted because they are members of the former ruling party, and so they are being targeted. For starters, when you look at the number of people that have been charged or are under investigation as announced by the investigating wings, they are a very, very small group compared to the number of people who were actually part of the PF government. So it doesn't make sense that 3, 4, 5 people that are facing corruption charges want to drag everybody who was ever in the PF government. Some of the people that were in the PF government are still in this government. Some of them actually in the same positions. This government has got PSs who were PSs in the PF government. So it would not be true to say everybody in PF is being targeted for investigation as far as corruption is concerned. Secondly, the evidence as it is right now is that this fight against corruption has not spared members of UPND, the president's own appointees that have been found wanting. It might not have been corruption charges, but things to do with breaking the law. The president has taken very decisive action. He has removed his own appointees who were charged or arrested by law enforcement agencies for having fallen foul of the law. That shows that this government, this president, does not want to apply the law selectively. So those that go around claiming that it is selective, they have not been able to produce any evidence to show anyone who has done what they are accused of doing, but because of the party they belong to, have been let to go scot-free. There is no evidence to that effect.
I'll repeat the question.
Yes.
Honorable.
Please do.
Is the fight against corruption selective? From what you tell me, I deduce that you are fighting corruption against the PF and the UPND.
Absolutely.
You are fighting. But the question is it across board? Let me break it, Honorable.
I get your point now.
There are, sorry to say this, there are a lot of foreign people that I play golf with.
Yes.
A lot of foreigners who will tell you in the face, you have the power, we have the economy. Year after year, election after election, you find these people getting contracts. You find these people amassing wealth. Why is it that no foreigner, I'm not talking about UPND.
Yes.
The PSS.
Yes.
I am not talking about PF or UNIP.
Yes.
I use the word, is this cutting across board?
Across the board.
Because, honestly, Honorable, with all fairness, there are people in this nation who own so much wealth and property who are not Zambians. Why hasn't the law visited them?
That's a very interesting perspective you are bringing on the fight against corruption. So let's break it down this way. For starters, by being a foreigner and a businessman in this country, one would not immediately equate it to them having engaged in corrupt practices.
Okay, let me put it this way.
Yes.
I'm talking about Zambians of foreign origin.
Wonderful.
Let me put it that way.
Yes.
It's not that they just came as investors. I'm talking about people who even have the citizenship, who have there are so many people. I can't mention names here.
Indeed.
You and I have grown up in this nation. So
Yes.
I'm talking about those.
Yes.
Well, let's leave the first foreigners who came to invest. I'm talking about
The ones who have now become Zambians.
who were friends to President Kaunda, friends to President
Chiluba.
friends to President Mwanawasa,
Yes.
friends to all these presidents, and some of them, you are with them in UPND.
Interesting. I will first of all start by confirming that, yes, the fight against corruption is not selective. Some of the people that have been called before law enforcement agencies in some of these cases involves Zambians who are at the face of it of foreign origins. Because as you know, some of them are fourth, fifth generation Zambians. It's their great-great-grandparents who might have come to Zambia. I think the evidence will show. However, one would also hasten to mention that the mere fact that a huge part of our economy, when it comes to business participation, is dominated by either Zambians of foreign origin or sometimes just people who come to invest directly in the country, is in itself an indictment on how we have managed our economic affairs since we got independence. But I don't want to sidetrack you by talking about what could have been done better in terms of empowering Zambians. But I think so far, where the evidence leads, the investigators will go. That's what we are seeing them doing. If there is evidence of any person, be it a Zambian of foreign origin or an investor, having colluded with a Zambian by birth to commit crimes, corruption, to circumvent the laws of the country, where there will be prosecution of such Zambians who participate, I am sure the relevant applicable laws will also follow the non-Zambians or Zambians of foreign origin who would have participated in the activities. So I do not think at this stage there is any evidence to suggest people are being left out. However, maybe what people might be confusing is that some people are charged with, say, abuse of office, all right? Which is a charge that's applicable to one who is occupying an office in the government. So if in abusing that office, somebody outside benefited, unfairly so, the law enforcement agencies have to weigh, you know, the kind of charges they can proffer against the other individuals. And we see that where there is evidence, so far, we see them being followed up as well.
I am asking this, Honorable.
Yes.
We talk about President Kaunda and these soldiers. Most of them, they went to the grave poor. And yet that time, land was in abundance.
Indeed.
They left things like flea parks.
Yes.
They left certain areas for development. When you look at Dr. Kaunda's reign, corruption was not as it is.
Indeed.
Okay? Now, because there was leadership code.
Absolutely.
One,
yeah,
you had to declare the asset, how you became rich.
Yes.
How much you have. Today, those things, up to today, there are some of you who haven't declared publicly how much you own. We just know Honorable MUBITA is rich from LUENA.
Yes.
There's no public, but in UNIP days you do not save without people seeing that. Secondly, what I noticed that in UNIP time, there was a national tender board.
Yes.
If I wanted to do something, the project with the government or whatever, it went through national tender board. Probably the chairman who is currently living that I know of personally is Teddy Mulonga.
Yes.
Teddy Mulonga was the chairman of that national tender board. When they sat on that national tender board, they never used to get instructions from State House.
Indeed.
They never used to get instructions from the minister. It was a body that had the teeth.
The powers.
But these governments, from MMD, UNIP, what, I've seen something which could be vulnerable for corruption. I'll tell you what. When President Sata came into power, he took all the road construction, everything under his office with the late William Sand.
Yes.
You do not get the road to Chasef if State House is not involved. And those things have continued. Today, DEC and what, they are under the office of the President. They are being administered from there. And one tends to think, can't I manipulate the system? I'm just saying, you know.
Yes, yes, yes.
One of the documentaries I like watching, Honorable,
yes,
is about prisoners, especially criminals.
Yes.
There is one word which says, "Do not underestimate the mind of a criminal." Criminals are 50 years ahead of you and me. While you are planning this as a committee, UPND, leadership, what criminals?
Yes. It's a very important point you raise, Pastor.
Yeah.
That's why this government has made it very clear that anyone who is going to engage in corruption or any form of lawlessness is on their own. Because this government realizes that if we do not have strong governance in the nation, we should kiss development goodbye. Having the privilege to serve the people as a member of parliament, and spending quite a bit of time looking at the Auditor General's report, you can see how much resources are applied for personal aggrandizement rather than for service. You can see how individuals make procurement decisions obviously with the view to benefit on the other side rather than to get value for money. The behavior that we know of us Zambians of negotiating everything down when it comes to prices. Even when they go to the market to buy tomato, they always want to say, oh, in Zingati 10 kwacha. They say, no, in person 8 kwacha. In person to Viru to 10 kwacha. Zambians are very good at negotiating.
Even in America, we negotiate.
Absolutely. But when it comes to spending public money, you find these same Zambians in offices entering into contracts that are so disadvantaging to the public purse. Somebody goes to sign a contract that charges huge penalties if the government or a government entity delays to pay. Yet there is no corresponding obligation on the supplier. And these people will let this contract sit for months, knowing very well that it's accruing interest. Sometimes they even have the money, but they don't pay. All right? So you see that the systems were being manipulated in order to enrich individuals. Now, I'm saying this to acknowledge the point you've made, that do not underestimate the mind of a criminal. Just yesterday, I was appearing on another TV program on another station, and I said that, look, the strength of any governance system is dependent on the moral consciousness of the people that are in charge of the system, not necessarily the rules. So, National Tender Board was transformed into the ZPPA that we now have. And that transformation was intended to make it easier for Zambians to actually participate in the economic affairs of the nation by doing business with government. But the same systems have over the years been abused by people. Especially when there was no political will to rein in this corruption. So we were told that, well, integrity committees have been formed in various organizations. So there are members of the integrity committee on the procurement committees. But when you look at the kind of procurement that they were doing and things they were agreeing to, you realize there was absolutely zero integrity here, despite them putting in place the so-called integrity committees. So what has been lacking to make sure that Zambians can once believe that when a government is procuring anything, they should trust that the government has taken their best interests at heart, was political will. And that political will is there. But you can see that because of the many years of Zambians believing that their government is always out to cheat them, individuals are always up to enriching themselves. Recently, when the government signed the P contract on the Ndola-Lusaka road, you will see that many Zambians were very skeptical, okay, because they simply had gotten used to an idea that for a project of this nature, somebody is eating somewhere.
I'll come to that. I'll come to that.
Yes.
Maybe what I'm just asking, Honorable,
yes,
is, okay, for example, it's in public domain.
Correct.
That the Auditor General wrote a letter to the PS Agriculture that they audit that on fertilizer distribution. Has that been adhered to?
That issue that has been in the public media, unfortunately, the people that have been reporting on it Personally, I haven't seen any evidence to that, because if it's the audit that is being carried out now, we can only engage with it when the report is finally published. And if the documents are not produced, I can assure you it will be in the audit report. Because one of the things that these institutions appear before various parliamentary committees, therefore before Parliament, the queries would include failure to produce the necessary documents. And there are sanctions that are applied when any officer refuses to comply with the PFMA requirements. And producing the necessary documents is part of the PFMA requirements. So I would think that at the moment, much of the noise that's being made regarding the so-called documents that the PS has refused to produce is a little bit suspect until we see the report. So I personally look forward to seeing that. I'm a member of the Parliamentary Committee on Parastatals and other statutory bodies.
You see, Honorable, I visited Ghana some time back.
Wonderful.
The way Jerry Rawlings fought corruption,
yes,
I was very blessed, because he was not looking at people like UMPs, ministers, PSs. He began from the officers.
Yes.
The officers right there. I can mention something. You people are looking at the PS, you are looking at the ministers, you are looking at the business people. Take time to go through ZRI. Just ZRI. I've mentioned that.
Yes.
Because that's a public institution.
Yes.
And being a pastor, I'm entitled to information that goes on there.
Correct.
Not the Director General or Commissioner General.
Yes.
But investigate the ZRA, those people who bring goods from, who charge a truck at Kapiri and what. You discover that Zambia loses more money than even a businessman in Livingstone whose account has been suspended.
I'm very happy to hear that. Not that I'm happy to hear that there's a lot of corruption going on, but why I'm happy is that, you see, we have come from a system, and it's connected to what I was saying earlier on, where people had gotten used to the lack of morality in the way things were being done. So corruption had become the norm. You know, I think you would recall that in fact the start of the normalization of corruption was Amadiro. You know, no Ninkwate deal. Without indicating what value one was adding in order to get the money that they were going to receive. All that you needed to say is, no, deal. That's where I got this money from. So what you are alluding to, Pastor, is serious challenges we have with the system. And the UPND government knows that this is not something you can clean out overnight. But it's a challenge that the government has thrown to law enforcement agencies to widen their net. I'm sure some of them are watching this program, and they are hearing issues that you are bringing on behalf of citizens.
But Honorable, sorry to say this, I'm speaking as a pastor.
Yes.
You see, the Bible says the heart of man is corrupt above all things.
Absolutely.
Those same law agencies, the president says widen the net, they are the ones who develop pot bellies. Because when they come to arrest me, and I plead, they will just say, oh, Pastor, I'm telling you,
that's
these things, I've seen them, I've heard them, I know about them. So while the president is trying very hard to fight corruption, if it was the president going to stand at Kapiri and inspecting trucks, I can tell you no truck would go without paying.
Indeed.
If the president was the one in anti-corruption there, in charge, but he's not an octopus. That's what I'm saying. You entrust me, and with my heart, you appoint me as a thief. I will be a dignified thief.
Now with authority.
In authority.
Yes.
This is what I'm saying.
Yes. No, I hear you, and I hear you very, very clearly. And it's no wonder the president has constantly been throwing the gauntlet to the people that he has appointed. Because just like you're saying, I mean, he can't go around supervising people on a daily basis. So the ACC needs to put in place systems that gives them intelligence on what's happening at these border posts when it comes to clearing goods. What's happening when it comes to VAT refunds? Do we have people that are signing off VAT refunds and they're then going to collect money with the companies or individuals that are claiming these refunds? What is happening with ZPPA? When contracts are approved in certain instances where you need ZPPA approval, especially when the companies are being single-sourced, direct bidding and things like that, how do they make sure that they keep a very close eye on those things? Because it is that system which will make Zambians realize that if in the past they thought you have a 90% chance of getting away with it and 10% chance of being caught, we need to move that to you have a 5% chance of getting away with it and 95% chance of being caught. Why? Because the tentacles of intelligence collection in order to fight the scourge of corruption must be reaching so far in all those corners. But I will again restate what I said earlier, that the starting point in all this is the need for political will. When there is the right tone set at the top, it easily cascades down. There will still be a few weak links in the chain as it is going down, but at least the tone will have been set and it will begin to show fruits. This we saw when Manawasa was in charge. Everybody acknowledges that there was a serious fight back against corruption. But because the system still remained pushing in the opposite direction, we saw what happens as soon as he died. You know, some of them, the very people that he was working with very closely to fight this corruption, were the same people to immediately stand on the mountain and dismantle the systems that were being put in place. Instead of strengthening, it was completely removed in order to open the floodgates for corruption.
Yeah, but you see, Honorable, when you talk about Manawasa, just isolated.
Yes.
President Manawasa cast the net wide.
Yes.
It did not just depend on the Anti-Corruption Commission. Because those systems, as long as they are not angels, even if they were angels, there will be some demons found there. Like,
among the angels.
Among the angels, like Lucifer was found.
He was an angel before.
Absolutely.
He did.
You see, President Manawasa had an encounter with him where I told him about certain things that he wanted to know, because I was sent by this person and said, money is going through there.
Yes.
And when we were in New York with my wife, I brought a report there that there were some Zambians who registered a company called Zesco Limited in New York. When the check was issued from Kafue God,
yes,
before it hit the Bank of Zambia, it was cashed in New York. I brought that and I said, there is a, and one man behind that, I don't know, after being gongered by the girlfriend, he died of depression. So it's such things, sometimes you may not get them through your system.
Indeed.
But if you go even to an idiot on the street, they may tell you facts which you can't get through all these established institutions. This is what I'm saying.
Indeed.
When people say there is corruption,
yes,
you as Honorable MP and the ministers, you defend with placards. There are no corruption cases. We have no evidence. But the man somewhere is scared that if I tell Honorable, tomorrow I will lose my house. So they would rather just let that corruption. This is what I'm saying, Honorable.
And that's what now people need to know, that this time around, if they bring that information, they will not lose their house. Because just like you said, the system of government is so huge that everybody has got a role to play in it. And if the relevant enforcement agencies do not get the information, and I take note of the fact that you have indicated that sometimes in these same enforcement agencies, there are actually rogue elements in there also. And hence the need for counterintelligence measures that will enable different wings be able to check each other. That's why I said that we are certainly not 100% there, but the right tone has been set now at the top. It now remains for the individuals who have been placed in these positions, one, to develop robust systems that will be able to catch the things you're talking about, be able to pick on those things and follow them. If people are observing that, well, every time in the night there's a truck that comes to flood things here, these trucks never come during the day. Why is it that they are always doing their business in the night? We need to encourage whistleblowing, and we need to protect whistleblowers.
What about, sorry, Honorable?
Yes.
I've heard about this Sajulite stone going.
Sajulite story. Perfect example.
Perfect example.
Yes.
Who is behind the Chibokaira? Because that is everyone is interested. I also want to have a mine near Sajulite. Who is behind the Chibokaira?
I don't know. But why I was referring to it as a perfect example, Pastor, is that you've seen what the president has done. In that, if you compare with the recent past where we came from, I mean, we all know about Mukula, if we were to make a comparison. And first of all, this Sajulite was not discovered now. It has been there before.
I know.
Yes. All right. How was it being mined? And nobody was ever taken to task. As soon as the system picked the individuals that were participating in this one, when the government or the president learnt of his own appointees being involved in that, people he had appointed into positions, what did he do? He took action. Immediately. There was no delay. Now, I think that is walking the talk. People can make speculations, and we've had a lot of speculation, of course. We have to understand that decisions have to be made based on evidence. And the relevant wings that need to bring that evidence must play their role. When that evidence was brought and they acted on it, the president acted. So I think we should be happy in comparison, because now we can see that there is no direct or indirect encouragement of people to continue engaging in illegal activities. So the challenge now that Zambians need to pick up is actually to hold the institutions that are responsible for enforcing some of these laws accountable. We need to get the heads of these institutions, you know, to ask them questions. ACC, what are you doing about what is being reported at ZRA? What are you doing about what is being reported at FRA and various institutions? So when they are taken to task, you take the heads of these institutions to task, they will also equally demand robust systems from the people that are answerable to themselves. That way, we will be able to spread the tentacles of the fight against corruption.
So can I ask, Honorable?
Yes.
Do you think there is corruption in UPND or there isn't?
I don't think corruption has been eliminated. I think we'll be burying our heads in the sand if we said corruption has been eliminated.
Do you go to church?
I do. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist.
This is why you are asking from the biblical point of view.
Yes.
Because when you ask certain politicians, do you think there is corruption? No. Not in our government. In the previous year. This has been the case from MUBITA. No, not us.
It will be very foolhardy of us to imagine that simply because there is UPND in government, the people that were doing corruption have stopped. No. Because if you actually look at how many people come in when a government changes, first of all, nationally you just elect at central government level 156 MPs plus the 8 appointed by the president, plus the president and the vice president. Then the PS is appointed, and from among the MPs the cabinet is formed. These are basically the only people that are coming from outside. You know, the rest of the system, the civil service system, remains intact, with a few changes here and there in the normal course of running the government.
And some ministers who've been from one system to another don't know how the corners are.
Exactly. So basically I'm making the point that it will be deceiving ourselves if we said simply because UPND is now in government, therefore all the corruption has evaporated. And that's why when it rears its ugly head, the president is acting.
Actually.
The difference is when, before we came into power, corruption would be talked about. We were seeing ministers being held before courts, still being in office. And they would be flying their flag, going to appear before a court and answering charges of corruption. That was completely defeating the whole pronouncements of we are willing to fight corruption. In this government, the president has led the way. So everybody else now needs to play their part. Just a few weeks ago when the president was addressing Parliament, I got to be thinking, when he was addressing Parliament on the values and the principles, you know, I was asking myself, why did the framers of the Constitution put this item in the Constitution, values and principles? And when you look at them, they all just center around the consciousness, our consciousness as Zambians, our consciousness as human beings. What is it that I consider unacceptable when I've been given a responsibility to deliver? I was giving an example to somebody yesterday that, look, we need to move to a situation where if you are given a 5,000 to deliver from Lusaka to take to Kabwe, you should ask yourself, what's the most efficient way of delivering this 5,000? Today there is mobile money. Now you find somebody, if you tell them that, well, use part of that same money to send the money, they will come and tell you that I hired a vehicle to take the 5,000. So they'll end up delivering only 300 kwacha there because the 4,700 has been incurred in expenses. If you tell them, buy something to eat along the way, they will go to the most expensive hotel to go and find something to eat in the process of delivering the 5,000 kwacha. So what I'm bringing to the viewers' attention here is the aspect of thinking, how best can I deliver for the benefit of the masses? And the area where we are struggling with corruption is in the area of procurement, because that's where the temptation is. Because many people are not applying themselves to these values and principles that are supposed to be our guiding mirror in terms of how we conduct ourselves as Zambians. And so you find that, like you said, that the focus should be on the officers. Excuse me.
From the officers.
The focus should be on the officers, from the officers. Because they are the ones that actually sign off the documents. They are the ones that actually write support documents to indicate that this is the best. This is the way we should go. Now, are they doing so with the view to deliver the maximum benefits to the society? Sometimes there are question marks. And we need a system that will be checking that same sometimes when there are question marks, to make sure that if there is impropriety involved, the officers are held to account. So as long as there is the political will as it is now, it's just a matter of time. Sooner or later, people will realize it's not business as usual.
This president is on the record from opposition to now, is on record of saying we want to create jobs.
Yes.
For the people, which I think is delivering. He has created, delivered co-health, teaching, and many more. We can now just point at teaching and health.
Yes.
But when you have, like I read a story 2 weeks ago of Savenda cutting its labor force, 800 workers plus to be laid off because the anti-corruption have suspended the operation of the accounts. And those 800 people who will be put on forced leave, I hope I'm not trading on court grounds.
I hope so.
But yes, they are being put on forced leave. What is your view of those 800 plus people that will go now into suffering?
Thank you very much for that.
You don't have to comment just
on the specific details, yes.
Yeah,
I think we will, in principle,
about
the individuals affected. Yeah. I mean, it's always a sad development when any individual loses their source of livelihood, when anybody loses their job. It certainly doesn't please the government, which would like to see more people getting jobs. That said, however, it will be a sad day if we reach a point where the end justifies the means. If the means is questionable, we should resist the temptation to say, but look at the benefits. And I'm not saying this in the specific case of Savenda, like you said, that the specific details we would want to stay away because we don't know at what stage in the judicial system it is. It reminds me of one of the biggest drug traffickers that you watch on documentaries and read about, Pablo Escobar. Okay. Pablo Escobar was such a generous man. And he was very popular in his home city of Medellin, I think. You know, he even had a football team that he was sponsoring. So he had a very big role to play even in the Colombian football sector. But he was doing so from drug trafficking. The principle of let's look at who will suffer when we eliminate lawlessness would be counterproductive to law enforcement and accountability. So I think much as one sympathizes with the people affected, subject to what the specific charges are, it's the more reason why the president said, let these cases be concluded as quickly as possible. So that there is very little inconvenience on the companies that are being investigated, as well as the people that are associated with those companies. That's the principle of making sure that the fight against corruption is done humanely.
The law in Zambia, Honorable, I can't quote the law.
Yes.
You are a lawmaker. The law in Zambia stands that I am innocent until proven guilty. In France, it's the other.
It's the other way around.
You are guilty until you are proven innocent.
Yes.
Take a scenario where SEC comes to me and says, Pastor Chilova, all these lights in the studio and the cameras
we suspect
were proceeds of crime.
Yes.
And they announce me to the world. Pastor Chilova has equipment from proceeds of crime.
Yes.
That damage of my reputation.
Yes.
Suppose I win the case and it's proven beyond measure that I didn't steal. What measures have you put in place as government or to remedy and restore my dignity in social media? In all the places where they know Pastor Chiluba was a thief, what measures have you put in place?
It's a very interesting perspective. However, let me put it this way. First of all, the law as it stands in Zambia at the moment allows the ACC to seize what is suspected to be proceeds of crime. And the purpose of that law was to make sure that you do not have a situation where, whilst the case is going on, the individual continues to enjoy that which they acquired illegally at the expense of society. So I think there were good intentions in that law. The implementation of any law when it comes to law enforcement will always have some negative consequences on the people that fall foul of the law. And it's for that reason, without trying to read the president of the president's mind, I would say that it's probably one of the things the president had in mind when he said, please do not arrest if you haven't done sufficient investigations.
This is what I'm coming to.
Yes.
Because the president is on record.
Yes.
Is consistent with that. But I'm just talking about the embarrassment, Honorable.
Indeed.
Where you publish my name. We have arrested
Pastor Chiluba and confiscated 7 cameras.
This. We suspect process. Isn't there a way of you as SCC, drug enforcement, isn't there a way, like the president says, you investigate, once you are satisfied and you say, this is it, and you push the case in court?
Yes.
Isn't there a way that you can now announce me to say, actually, this man you see preaching is a nephew process of crime? Isn't that more noble than maybe announcing my case, which is premature? Maybe I win the case. I'm just looking at the damaging aspect of it, because wealth aside, Honorable, I've got a reputation. I've got a name to protect. It's just that, which cannot be, because each time I move Mukairo Road, they say, you watch this man on TV? So that kind of thing. So I'm just looking at that.
It's a tricky balancing act that the law enforcement agencies have to strike. And given that they do have that provision, because you can't enforce law secretly, unfortunately. At some point, it will have to be announced. Where the debate has been is this announcement being done at what everybody would consider that this is the appropriate time? And I think that's the challenge the president has thrown to the law enforcement agencies, to say that only effect an arrest when you have done thorough investigations.
Now, when you look at the leadership of Dr. Kaunda,
yes,
you and I were growing up, though we may differ in age.
Yes.
Dr. Kaunda would announce certain things during the press conference.
Yes.
After he had investigated what? He has the facts on his press conference. You hear, oh, Honorable MUBITA have fired him.
Yes.
The moment you are fired,
the law enforcement is also moving.
Now they start following you. I think that kind of thing was more to the advantage of the victims. Because the president has announced there, or something has been proved, then the agencies kick in. Not just at inception.
If you look at even what used to happen under Kaunda, you will notice that there are a lot of people that ended up with just a cloud of suspicion hanging over their heads.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I think what we have progressed to has been an improvement. But it now remains for the agencies, the ACC, DEC, to make sure that we probably target what happens in Japan. You see, in Japan, the conviction rates, once you are arrested,
even in China,
okay, is so high. Because by the time you are arrested, the evidence is solid.
Absolutely.
The case goes to court, your chances of being acquitted are almost zero. And hence, Japan records very high conviction rates. So I think it's a learning curve that we are going through. And as citizens like you doing now, raising these issues and saying, look, what can we do to minimize the reputational damage that is done? Because the information that you receive might somewhat look credible, but it requires further analysis.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you don't want the individual to continue enjoying their proceeds of crime. Sometimes they might even get rid of the evidence in the process. By the time you get to them, there is nothing you can recover for the citizens. So it's a balancing act. And in many cases, if you actually followed what has been happening in Zambia recently, is that the people that are being summoned are the ones that are publicizing these cases. Some of them will even say that, no, I've been told they are coming to confiscate my house. So they are publicizing this information, of course, in most instances, because they want to own the narrative. They want to cite political persecution because they occupied some position in the past. But we still need to put the spotlight on the law enforcement agencies. To what extent are they complying with the president's stated desire at that level, that please arrest only when you have investigated, so that when cases are taken to court, there is minimum interruption on disruption on the individuals, and there's also minimum interruption in terms of the adjournments, because there is so many corners that you still want to check before you are able to put a solid case before a judge. I think all this is part of making sure that we strengthen our systems. If there is need to revisit some of these acts, the ACC Act, the DEC Act, you know, then as a nation, we should engage in this conversation so that we see where we can strengthen, bearing in mind that we want to promote a culture of respect for human rights.
And integrity.
Yes. You will recall, Pastor, that the president, people have even forgotten the issue of just locking people up in cells. Because the president said, anybody who is entitled to police bond, give them police bond. If we just look at where we came from a few years, just a few, not too many months ago, Pastor, because we've only been in power as UPND just slightly over a year. We are approaching 2 years in August. It was the norm to simply pick people and arrest and lock them up. And then 2 weeks later, get this individual out. What charges are they facing? Nothing.
What about is it Mansa or Monse, council chairperson? The videos are there. They've been in cells for more than 7 days.
Yes.
For over the same satellite or whatever.
And that's another very good example. It shows that there are no sacred cows in the new dawn. But for staying, for being infringement on how long he was going to stay.
Correct.
Police bond is not automatic. There are conditions one needs to meet. So I'm not familiar with what exactly the specifics were with his case or his and his colleagues' case in terms of why they stayed longer. But I think now they have since been given police bond, and therefore they are enjoying their freedom.
Let's talk about the road. We are winding up, but I want to come to development.
Yes.
Let's talk about the road, the controversial road Lusaka Chingola or Ndola Geo Carriageway.
Yes. It's a very good example of what the citizenry who have come from a past where every time a government announced a big project, citizens would be doing their calculations of Valeria Moshingo. Yes. And when a government comes and says, we want to do things transparently, citizens become a little bit resistant. Instead of celebrating the development, some of them would like to listen to people that are peddling all sorts of innuendos about the project, when all the information is on the table. This project, first of all, everybody would know that our colleagues, when they were in power, announced that they were going to do this project. And they mentioned figures that were out of this world. In fact, if you put everything together, it was going to cost almost 2 billion. But even if you were just going to pick the figure that they announced, it was 1.2 billion. Without the extras, that was going to increase it to 2 billion eventually. Now the government comes and announces and says, we are going to do this project at 600 million. Somehow the citizens want to believe there's somebody who is getting a cut. The institutions that are involved in this, it's a triple P. The contractor went and sought financing from various institutions. And those institutions are making independent decisions to participate in the project if they see it worthwhile and in line with their own mandate. And the biggest question that I've seen being discussed on social media was the suggestion that NAPSA is throwing money down the drain. And people are not even acknowledging the fact that NAPSA has already invested in some of these targets. Because NAPSA's mandate is to grow your contributions. And so they finance a lot of projects. And here was a good opportunity to participate in a very feasible project such as the Ndola-Lusaka dual carriageway. The economy of this country runs a lot between the Copper Belt and Lusaka. This is a major link from south to north and the neighboring countries. Yet people still wanted to cast aspersions on it. This is a very, very good project. And I think as Zambians, we should celebrate it. That for once, we can actually see the link between the pension contributions that you make and the infrastructure being developed without so many questions being asked.
So is it true
Yes.
that this foreigner or this foreign company sourced the money from pensions or from NAPSA? Is that true?
No. We need to understand what a triple P is. First of all, the contractor has also invested equity in there. So they have brought in their own money. But what maybe we need to give our viewers an understanding of is what a triple P actually involves. Basically, what the government would have in a triple P is a job that needs to be done. Then you would come through and say, well, I can do this job. All right? I am going to find everything that's needed for this job to be done. So you go and source funds. You sign your own agreements with your financiers. And in Zambia, we have a Triple P Act that spells out what are the things that must be in place before the government can conclude the first phase. So what was being signed there, one of those stages is financial closure, where the contractor says, I have sourced funding. Where the contractor gets funding from might be one institution, 3 institutions, or even 10 institutions. Surely, what is it that people would have loved the government to do in this instance? Because would it have been better if the contractor went to China to look for money, and then all the money that would be paying on these toll gates, including the interest, goes to China?
So all the money that will be paid here, no money will leave the country. It will be in Zambia. That's my understanding.
It will go to the institutions that have financed the project.
Which
so if NAPSA is one of them, NAPSA will get its share. If Stanbic is one of them, they will also get their share.
So for 25 years?
They will also be getting their share.
So anyway.
So they will grow their investment.
Let me say this, Honorable.
Yes.
Again, I get puzzled from MMD, PF, to you, UPND. I get puzzled because right where we sit, let's not miss where we sit, where I sit.
Yes.
I know people and funders that can give us 100 million, 300 million. Some people have flown here from the previous government. I've brought in people here who could have done some project. But at what time you give this project? I'm just, I'll cite one example.
Yes.
When you say Black Mountain will be managed by this, you don't throw it in public so that I can also bid.
You can also participate.
From Lusaka, yes.
Yes, yes,
to say I've got 50 trucks. The government has given Black Mountain. That has been the case. I don't know whether you advertise to all the Zambians, giving us a period to say, Zambians, those of you who've got people who can fund, here is the project. I don't know. This
one was actually advertised. It was advertised, and in fact, I think it was not the only one that was advertised. The government has been seeking partners under the Triple-P arrangements for many roads, including this one. And this one has been concluded. I think the other one is the Kasumbalesa one. That was also concluded. The others, the government is still waiting.
Which office gives this? So that tomorrow
you go there with these funders, yes. There is actually a Triple-P office at the Ministry of Finance, I think. The head of the Triple-P unit, I think that unit sits at the Ministry of Finance. And all they do is to make sure that the law is applied in engaging Triple-P arrangements. And you can even do an unsolicited one. That is allowed.
Why I'm saying this, Honorable, we are looking at corruption. We have left that.
Indeed.
Now I come to development.
Yes.
I tell you, Honorable, if you don't empower Zambians, if you don't empower Zambians, even if somebody is looking like an idiot, but they come to you and say, I can make nets.
Yes.
I can, if you don't look at Zambians to do bigger things, I can tell you, you fail to stabilize the kwacha.
That's very, very important.
Right now, the kwacha is at 20 point something.
Yes.
And I expected that the MMD will bring it down to
the UPND.
UPND will bring it down to 8, 12, somewhere there, but we're at 20.
Yes.
I don't blame you.
Yes.
I blame the policies Zambia puts in place. Because apparently Africans don't love their fellow Africans. For us to stop capital flight, Honorable, if you see that, Pastor Chua, here is this studio and the church we have put here.
Yes.
Where can I go? Will I transport this to South Africa?
No. It will bring you back.
It will bring me back. Yes. So if I've been saying this to UPND, I mean MMD, I've been saying it to PF, maybe you have heard me here.
Yes, yes, yes.
As long as you don't empower Zambians, Honorable, you're an accountant.
Yes.
Balance the economy. I'm telling you.
You are making a very, very important point, Pastor. And one thing that the president has almost made a song is the need for Zambians to participate in the economic activities of the country. Because that's the only sure way to grow an economy with a corresponding improvement in the standard of living of our people. Because when the economy is controlled by multinationals, you could actually record positive GDP, but without a corresponding improvement in the standard of living by the population, when they are not sufficiently involved in the economy of their country. This government, Pastor, has taken deliberate steps. I know that due to time we didn't even get to talk about some of the key policies that have been put in place, but one of those that I would want to take advantage of this opportunity and remind ourselves, even though it has been said over and over, is the increase in CDF. You remember that the president said we are taking money from the thieves in Lusaka. Okay, because he acknowledges that the thieves have not disappeared. We are taking money from the thieves in Lusaka to the people in the rural communities. The empowerment component, including the skills development, is to adopt a methodical approach in getting our people to participate in the economy. If you go to these rural local authorities, you find that everything they are doing, even when they needed just somebody to paint a small structure, they will have to get a painter from somewhere else, from Lusaka. That means the local economy was collapsed completely. And that means people's living standards there cannot improve. So by improving the lives of the people at that level and enabling them to participate, the kids we are taking to skills development now will be the ones that we want to participate in constructing classrooms, constructing staff houses. We have a serious shortage of staff houses in the rural areas. We have a school where there are 3 houses and you have 11 teachers. If the local communities do that job and they get paid for it, the local economy gets rejuvenated. And they interact with each other, the standard of living will improve. All that is to do exactly what you are saying.
That CDF you've talked about, to me, it's like, what should I say? I just hear it as one of the songs.
This is a very practical song.
Because I can tell you, in my constituency where I am, I've even been to the office of the minister twice. And the last time the secretary said, no, Pastor Mukayeko, constituency office, not me.
And they could see CDF constituency office.
I want to understand CDF, how it works.
Yes.
I want to know, if you tell me, Honorable, okay, this is the officer, that is the officer, how it works
is this way, yes.
I'll be able to follow. Fill in these forms, I fill in, I do this. But even where I'm asking, Honorable, how do you distribute this? I took as a constituency. How do you get this? So, you know, sometimes I tend to say that the Bible is so straight, all you need is a preacher man to help you get confused by going into details. Greek means this, Hebrew means this. When God says love your neighbor, you don't need the Greek.
And then the playing field begins to look like it's a bush. Yeah.
Nevertheless, Honorable, let me leave the time for people to ask questions.
Sure.
The phone calls, but it pains me when I see that Paul Kagame came into office on the 22nd of April, the year 2000. When you see Rwanda, how it is today, 23 years after he assumed office, and where Zambia is, 1964, I always say, is there a
Where did we get it wrong?
on our nation?
Certainly not.
Is it what is happening? And me personally, Honorable, I'm a firm believer from Dr. Rauna. But I've spoken to each one of them on one-to-one that Mr. President empower the Zambians. Presidents that are 2 weeks into office, 1 week into office, I said, sir, now you have taken over power.
Empower the Zambians.
Empower the Zambians. Once you make a deliberate policy You just go with a megaphone like you announce, wash your hands, there is cholera, wash your hands. You go with a megaphone. Those with visions come to government house. Those with dreams come, you announce. You will see the queue there. And Zambia will be a better country to live in. You know?
Indeed.
But where you don't give out the information, you don't educate your own people. It is true. And nobody can dispute, Honorable, that foreigners are enjoying in this nation than Zambians. And that's a fact.
And that's a trend that this government has made a point that it wishes to reverse. And the programs that are being put in place and the opening up of space for Zambians to participate, I think if Zambians are still thinking it's just words without action, all they need to do is to try. Because the president has so many times, even just a couple of weeks ago, he was talking about positive discrimination. All that is because the president and his government desires to do exactly what you are saying, Pastor Chiruba. And it's now remains for the officers who are the foot soldiers, who are the implementers of these policy pronouncements, to make sure they deliver the dream. And the Zambians should make as much noise as possible when they feel that what the president has indicated and pronounced as his desire is not being complied with. Because like we said, he doesn't have 20 eyes. He only has got 2 eyes and he can only see in one place at a given time. Of course, there is the whole system that's there to support him, but it's not everything that he will be able to see at the earliest possible time if Zambians don't say.
The other problem that you have as government, I can tell you, Honorable, I told Honorable Celia, sitting where you are sitting as government,
yes,
Minister, you as a government, you have a problem. The problem you have is you don't want to disseminate this information. You see, you have come here.
Yes.
How many times have I invited ministers? Now that I'm on phone, you're in Washington first. In case a week, Honorable Nawa to me, they never come. Whether you like it or not, Cabinet has got an audience.
Yes.
It has a following.
Yes.
Here you are, Honorable. You have responded to come.
Thank you.
What you are speaking here, because you are a member of Parliament, truth be told, you are not representing the government.
Indeed, indeed.
You are speaking as Honorable Member of Parliament.
Indeed.
Though you are a member of the UPND.
But yes.
The one who is supposed to be sitting here is Honorable Chushika Sanda, or the Minister of Finance, Mr. Musokotwane, or these ministers.
Yes.
You see? But here you are. You have given valid information, which people may need, instead of just speculating.
Yes.
So the problem you have as government, some of your ministers are too selective. I'll go to that station, I'll go to that, not this one, not that one. But you have to disseminate the information to all Zambians.
Indeed.
You know.
And it is unfortunate if that is the case, but I'm sure the 1 or 2 names you've mentioned, if when you invited them, they were not around, I will pass the invitation to them. And
I've been inviting ministers.
I've been inviting them.
Members of the opposition,
yes,
they have no problem.
Yes.
They even ask me, Pastor,
can I come?
But ministers,
because they want to come and cry political persecution.
No.
Yeah, but no, I'm just saying that in jest. Yes.
Because they want to come and provide checks and
balances, which is very important.
But the ministers, to just come and answer. How did you allocate that Black Mountain?
Yes.
How is the CDF? They hide in the name of busy schedules. But the nation needs to hear from you.
Indeed.
As government.
Indeed. And if you allow me, because actually what brought this was the issue of CDF.
Open the lines, Mr. Director, please. Thank you.
Indeed, CDF is a reality. And the appropriate office is either the constituency office or the local authority. Here in Lusaka, where you are, obviously you fall under Lusaka City Council, so looking after so many constituencies. But there is also your area councillor, who I think should be willing to come over here and run you through, because in fact, I'm sure you do have people that want to come and get recommendations from the church when they want to participate to receive assistance from CDF. Because one of the recommendations that's acceptable, be it for bursary support, is a letter from either a church leader, and you being a very well-established church in this area, you have that authority. And the council will look at it and say, well, this has actually come from Pastor Chiluba, so he vouches for this individual. Therefore, it's important that you are given all the information, so that when people come to you and say, oh, but Pastor, you know actually how it's going to move from your signature and up to the CDF committee and eventually the approval process, everything you should know. However, it's important to state that this has changed the lives of people, especially in the rural areas. I know in Lusaka, because people think about very big projects, but in the rural areas, we have, if for example I talk about LUENA constituents, just last week I was at one of my wards in Angola. We do not have a secondary school, a boarding secondary school in LUENA constituents. That means that we were only able to support very few children who managed to get admission in boarding secondary schools in other constituencies and other districts. We are now decided we are going to put up dormitories at Nangula Secondary School. And that is going to change the lives of the children that would have otherwise been doing weekly boarding, which is simply no boarding at all. The weekly boarding arrangement is so terrible for the children, and it affects the quality of learning for these children in the rural areas. That we are able to do in CDF. We have been able to put up classrooms in 1 year. In fact, in the next couple of days, I'm going to be commissioning a classroom at Mupatu Primary School, as well as one at Ndiki in Angola Ward, as well as a house in Malala in Danda Ward. These are things that people have not seen over so many years, but it's all happening within a very short period of time.
But what you are saying, Honorable, it's very true.
Yes.
Irrefutable. But I am still insisting that you have a lot to offer information to the common man there.
Indeed.
I was so surprised when I went to CEEC to discover that actually they give loans cheaper than the bank.
Yes.
And Zambians don't know that. They would rather go to the banks where they will come and grab the house. They will come and grab the vehicle. Now you as a government, if you are not having deliberate policies
to inform the citizens,
what will it do? Secondly, you have no deliberate policy to say, look, Cabinet there is disseminating information. Let's get some money and help them buy this equipment that, not just Cabinet, but Zambian
media houses.
That is out of question. This is a cooperative. You are using it because you are a member of the corporation.
Yes.
Cooperative. Everyone. Yes. But the government, I don't know. Let me say this, I believe the weight, when you put a shark on the scale and you take 5,000 brims, they are going to outweigh the weight of the shark.
Of this one big shark.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
You governments, you like dealing with sharks. You forget booger fish. Like we have no weight. So, Honorable, therefore, please pay attention, and may I appeal, UPND is smaller to develop Zambia.
Indeed.
PF is smaller to develop Zambia.
Indeed.
UNIP was smaller to develop Zambia. My prayer is, have the heart to even go to your friends who say bad things about you, the opposition.
Yes.
Sit down around the table and see how you can develop this nation. In my language, where I come from, Honorable, my language, we have been saying kuli kubapala kufitalo basi.
Kubapala kufitalo basi. That's a good one.
Hello. Hello. Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Who is calling?
This is Mkandawile from Rwanda.
Dr. Mkandawile from Rwanda, please speak to the nation.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Honorable.
Good evening, Dr. Mkandawile.
Yeah, now I have two issues, basically. One, actually, first of all, I need to point it out which are not satisfied in terms of your answer.
Yes.
Number one is on the road. Are we really sure that this contractor went and approached NAFTA, approached it, went by conversation to say, I want a loan from you so that I can use it on this road? That is one thing we should have asked. Number two, on the same one, when the president says, you know, this what is at 1.2 billion, we are doing it off for the half the price. When we really sincere to the Zambians, are we saying that the scope of the roads remains the same as PS quoted to say that we are going to do this visit of the road, on the road, the infrastructure, and these things remain the same, but you can come in and will do it at half the price. Are we really sincere? Can we produce those details that the scope of the road was the same and remains the same? Because obviously the scope of the road has changed, actually the price will change. So that is one area. Number two, on the corruption, when you're talking about the will is there, we are glad to see that the way privatization was done. Surely we start from there. Let the corruption go into that privatization system.
Oh, sorry. Dr. Mkandawire has talked about corruption as the last point.
Yes.
Did you hear anything?
I did
What
hear.
is it?
Yes.
But he has talked about, is it true that
Yes.
the contractor approached NAPSA or the government sourced, single sourced? I think that's what I heard. And also that the quality of the road, yes, PF quoted 1.2. Assuming, and you come and say 6 million.
600 million.
600 million.
Yes.
And then he talks about, what is your quick answer to that one?
Yes. Let's start with the corruption that he is talking about, because he was saying that he wants the fight against corruption to start with privatization. I think I have an idea of what where he's going with the insinuation that there was corruption during privatization. And we all know, if he followed privatization, there were people that were actually prosecuted for flouting the Zambia Privatization Act and engaging in corrupt practices during privatization. So if he knows of any, or anybody knows of any other people that he engaged in corrupt activities during that process. All they need to do is to just provide the evidence to the relevant investigative wings, because the privatization process in this country was carried out under the ZPA Act, and the relevant laws were adjusted accordingly to provide for that process. Those that did things contrary to the law were held to account.
You know, sometimes, Honorable, though we insist on evidence, sometimes it's difficult to provide evidence. I'll tell you what.
I get now. So we're making progress.
I'll tell you what.
Indeed.
Up to now, I do not understand who gave those shops when you are going at Kamwala Flyover Bridge.
Yes.
Who gave the plots near the rail line there? Those things were an eyesore. Because Dr. Kaunda, during that time, they said you cannot put a building next to the rail line. If it derails, you need at least 50 meters for the cranes to move.
Yes.
And lift the wagon.
Yes.
50 meters. Look at what they've done to...
There's no space even for an individual to, even if you have to lift the wagon manually, there's no space.
Absolutely. So now, if that was not corruption, what was it? Because the town planners, they planned way back to say you cannot put this. There are certain things. So, even without evidence, I can tell you that was the act of corruption.
Okay. I think there are issues that point to the failure in the capacity of our local authorities to manage the affairs of the various cities. And I think in Zambia we have seen that. Some cities grew so rapidly, and the local authorities were playing catch-up.
There is a call. Hello?
Yes.
Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
Permanently blessed. How are you too?
I'm alright.
Who are we talking?
This is the citizen, the first youth chairperson from ANAKOKA, Southern Province. And tell them well online.
Our citizens first.
Citizens first.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a contribution to make, though I want the honorable on the studio to clarify. You see, when you are hosting a politician, we, the listeners who are watching, we must refuse to say there is a politician in the studio. But I feel that there is a pastor in the studio. Maybe it's an anointing on him, we should be requesting that he. Now, I want him to comment on the death of Martin Chiburo, a youth who was a UPND member, who was killed when UPND was still in opposition. We saw UPND going into office now, but they have not tried to bring to book the killers, or rather investigate and find out who the killers are. As President Alain was promising to say, the moment we go in office, we are going to make sure that the killers of Martin Chiburo, among others, we are going.
Have we lost him? But I got what he was saying.
You know the case?
Yes, I know the case of the young lady Mapenzi Chiburo, who
it's not
was
in the
gunned
courts
down.
of law so that cabinet is sued.
I'm careful to comment on it because he is saying, he didn't finish what he was saying, but he is suggesting that
the president said
it will be investigated.
I get into office, I'll investigate, and there is no report.
And I'm sure it will be investigated if it's not being investigated right now. But I believe all those cases are being investigated. So I think what Citizens First needs to do is just wait. Certainly this matter is being addressed. And this is what I was going to allude to earlier on, to say, when there is political will, one of the things that this government is doing is to make sure that mischief of the past, mischief of the present, and even future mischief is treated equally. And our law enforcement agencies, as far as I know, they are on these cases to make sure that people that injured or killed citizens in cold blood are made to account for their actions. So while we are waiting for another caller, maybe I can comment on what Dr. Mkandawire from Russia was asking about. We have already responded on the issue of corruption and privatization.
The road.
Yes. Now he wants to talk about the road. He's expressing what I was saying earlier on, that you see, citizens, some citizens want to believe there is something wrong with the announcement when the news is very good. Because we have come from an era where there was always something hidden. That's why it's important as a nation to recalibrate our psyche and for once believe that when the government is doing something, it has looked into all aspects. If we have any input, we are free to bring that input on the table for the government to take into account without coming from a perspective that says there is already something wrong here, I just don't know it. Which is what Dr. Mkandawire is almost saying here. There was something wrong with the 1.2 billion. And when we were in opposition, I do remember Honorable Charles Melupi, before he even became minister, talking about this on various radio programs. I do remember President Hakainde talking about this. I do remember Minister Msokotan talking about this. I do remember Minister Garin Kombo talking about this. There was something wrong with the 1.2 billion. And you will recall, Pastor, that in fact there was even a $30 million that was paid to a certain company, for which nothing was done. So these figures that have been announced are a representation of what has been agreed by this macro ocean consortium and the financiers and the scope of work. So for us to start asking who approached who between NAPSA and the Workmen's Compensation Control Board, as well as the Stanbic, look, people that are in business locate each other. Like I said, this was advertised in the newspapers, and companies responded. And those that responded obviously had to talk to each other. Surely it would be unfair to start asking, no, but who first of all went to the other? It's not a secret that NAPSA is looking out for investments.
No, but like Dr. Mkandawire, there is, what should I say? No, English is not my mother's language, but I want to find a word where I'm not implicated in things.
Yes.
But what Dr. Mkandawire probably is saying, could it be that this ocean, whatever basket or whatever company,
micro-ocean, yes.
Micro-ocean, there is a prominent businessman who can be traced here in Zambia and having an upper hand with the Chinese?
If there is, people should bring that evidence forward. From what has been announced so far, we are not aware of any prominent businessman. In fact, I think there is a prominent businessman who, through social media, was being linked to that, and he issued a rebuttal statement saying, I'm completely not involved, neither is any of my companies involved. Now, if somebody says I'm not involved, unless there is evidence to the contrary, I think as Zambians we need to reach a point where we say, well, so, that's a fact.
So can I go to NAPSA tomorrow and ask them for some funding of one of the national developments in, is there a provision now? Have they been certified by Bank of Zambia that they are lenders of money?
NAPSA has actually been doing a lot of that, Pastor. Absolutely. NAPSA has been making a lot of investments. It's just that, and I'm happy you're actually saying that. If you went to NAPSA to ask them about their investment portfolio, you will see that NAPSA has partnered with a lot of private companies, because NAPSA seeks to grow their pension fund. And therefore, they look for investment opportunities.
Let's pick up this phone call. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Pastor. How are you?
Permanently blessed. What's your name and where are you calling us from?
Pastor, my name is MUBITA.
Honorable Mutotwe.
I've been enjoying your conversation with my honorable colleague there. Honorable ANAKOKA, good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Gafaya. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm very thank you so much.
Thank you.
Honorable ANAKOKA, I followed your conversation from the start. I have two contributions to make. First, I'll make a contribution on the letter the Auditor General wrote to the PF and Chief of Agriculture. And secondly, I'll comment on the LUENA. But first, I want you to clarify, because earlier you said there are PFs who are working in PF who are still working in UCNA. Please just tell me one or two PFs who are still working, who are working in PF. Who are those?
Okay, you want us to deal with that now?
Yes, so that I compete with the two issues that I have for you.
I think the PS at infrastructure was there before.
What is the name?
Engineer Mfune.
Okay, the next one.
Honorable. Well, at least we have answered that we have provided a name and the ministry.
Okay, well,
yes.
So I don't know of any PS who of the PS who is still working in your PS.
Oh, the other one. I can give you another one, actually. I can give you another one. Trevor Kaunda. Trevor Kaunda is at Cabinet Office now. He was PS, I think, Lands at some point, and then he moved to another ministry. He was a PS in PF, and he's still in this government. I think he's at Cabinet Office now.
Well, thank you so much. This is getting next, I'll go back to that. No, my first comment. Number one, I was accountant yourself for Honorable ANAKOKA. I expected you to be more passionate about the national authority. It should be unacceptable for you to defend a peer who has been written to by the Auditor General in more than one letter, demanding for information, and that Auditor General has refused to give information. On the floor of the House, I asked the Minister of Agriculture to confirm whether he has convinced his peers that in subsequent audit papers, his peers were going to provide the Auditor General. The Minister of Agriculture said yes, he has confirmed it. So I think it should be clear that the peers in agriculture has refused to take the documents to the Auditor General, and it's unacceptable. That's a constitutional audit. It must be supported by you, me, and every Zambian. Secondly, the issue about the Lusaka dollar dual carriage rate. As an accountant, you know very well that the cost of that road will include all the money that the country is going to lose because that money will not go into national coffers. So to just put a $600 million, and because that as the cost for the road is a gross understatement, because there's a huge opportunity cost for government. Do not ignore that that's a very important component. But also, you also have to consider the scope of work. What were the scope of work then, and what are the scope of work now? I think it is important to balance the argument so that you are more objective in the manner you deliver information to the Zambian people than things not that political and misleading people. So I expect you, my honorable colleagues, to be able to tell the Zambian public balanced information regardless of whether you are a UPNG or European. I think I've called you on here, and those are my views on your submission, but overall I think I enjoyed your conversation with the man on the phone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Pastor, should I?
Please go ahead.
Yes. First of all, I want to thank my colleague, Honorable Kafwaya, for calling in. That's as it should be, because then he's providing the checks and balances live in the studio. Let's start with the issue of the PS agriculture. My position still remains the same. I'm very passionate about auditing issues, and like I said, I'm a member of the one of the accountability committees in Parliament, which is the Committee on Parastatals and other statutory bodies, and we look at the report of the Auditor General on parastatals and other statutory bodies. So I'm extremely passionate about these matters. However, things have to be done procedurally. The letter that he's referring to, I have never seen it myself. Because if the auditing process is still ongoing, I would be asking myself, at what point would we as members of Parliament have access to the communication between the Auditor General and the clients? We don't have, at least from where I sit, where I know the auditing is supposed to be the way, the process of auditing, we don't have access to that. We only have access when the report is done. And what I know is where documents have not been produced, the query about failure to produce documents will arise. And that's the point at which we as Parliament now begin to play our role. We don't play that role when the Auditor General is carrying out the audit. No, we don't. And my colleague, Honorable Mtoto Kafwaya, as a professional accountant himself like me, knows that very well. So my appeal to him is, and I know he has raised this matter more than once on the floor of the House, is let's wait for the process, because that process terminates at the National Assembly. The report will be brought to Parliament. At that point, the queries he is raising will be there, if at all it's true. Let's come to the Ndola Lusaka Duo Carriage Road. He is talking about, yes, two things he said. The first one, he says the cost should include all the money that the government would have collected. First of all, basically he is trying to invoke something that's called the opportunity cost also should be taken into account. My colleague knows very well that when you are costing projects for purposes of funding, opportunity cost is never included. There isn't a single project my colleague would share with me that was done under the PF where they included the opportunity cost when they announced the figure to the nation. Because you only deal with direct costs. That's the way accounting is done, and he knows it. For decision-making purposes and the other circumstances, you would take into account the opportunity cost, but not for just indicating what the cost is of carrying out a project in order to finance it. I mean, that would be complete confusion if that's the approach that had been taken. The scope of works, what I do recall is when the PF announced the 1.2 billion, we were told about cities that were going to be constructed along the road, all kinds of things. And the nation said, even if that was to be true, that wasn't the best way to utilize the money. But beyond that, Pastor Chiluba, that wasn't simply a reflective cost of constructing a road. That debate, I think, has been closed now in terms of what exactly is the true cost of constructing the road from here to Ndola. Because in my language, there's something we say to the effect that what's coming should not break your neck. What should break your neck is what's going. You know, because you want to see it, otherwise you won't know what it is. But if it's coming, just sit here, relax. It will be here. The road from Lusaka to Ndola will be done. And people will see it.
Maybe the Honorable meant the scope.
Yes, now.
My understanding of the word scope would mean I'm not putting my words into his mouth. The costing differing.
Yes.
Differing. Maybe PF said there will be 3 lanes going and the 3 lanes coming. If you reduce it to 2 lanes going, 2 lanes coming,
yes,
that amount could come down. I'm just talking about the scope of work.
Yes.
You know, maybe because I remember, I don't know, this company which was constructing the road to Kafue, way back from Finland. They used to do $500,000 per kilometer.
Was it Phoenix?
Phoenix
contractors, yes.
And you know, 500. 500. So if it's 500, I'm not an accountant. $500,000 per kilometer. 10 kilometers will give me 50,000. 100 kilometers.
No, 10 kilometers will give you 5 million.
5 million.
Yes, yes, right. Yes.
100 kilometers will give me 50 million. Now, 50 million, I say 1,000 kilometers. If it's dual carriageway, drainages, are you going to put lights and what, like those roads we drive on in the States? Is that what you are going to put on? I think that's the scope I'm understanding. What else is going to be there? So
the suggestion that the difference in price is due to an adjustment in the scope of works to be done is certainly not valid, at least for the project we are talking about, Lusaka Ndola dual carriageway. For a very simple reason that, in fact, they themselves, when they announced the 1.2 billion, they had challenges clearly spelling out what the scope actually was going to be. I wasn't a member of parliament, but I listened to the ministers being asked. Then we were in opposition, and UPND members of parliament were asking questions about this project. They had challenges spelling out exactly what the scope was, other than just saying, no, there will be facilities where people can rest, there will be restaurants in some bypasses, giving all sorts of examples. It didn't justify the huge cost, because we were not going to be the first ones to construct roads that had those facilities in the region. It didn't justify, and my brother knows that. So I think the scope of works cannot be a basis for this comparison. What we strongly believe as UPND is that I don't want to say there was corruption, but we suspect that a huge chunk of that money wasn't going to go on constructing the roads.
Where was it going to go?
It was going to go to middlemen.
Are there middlemen in UPND?
On this project, I'm not aware of any.
On this project, that's on this project. On the other,
on this project, I'm not aware of any. On other projects, I have no idea. If somebody was to give me a project and say, here is the project on which there are middlemen, and these middlemen are not delivering anything but air, yet they are being paid.
So were you given the names of the middlemen on the Ndola?
That's why I said we suspect.
Oh, you are
yes, we suspect, because the figures were not adding up. But the scope of works has actually, from our perspective, been expanded, because it even includes the road now to Luansha.
You've been thorough in your presentation, and I'm running out of time.
Thank you.
2 questions.
Thank you.
Right now, as we speak, there are over 40 presidents in Moscow that are attending the conference Russia has hosted. You are aware?
I was just getting on the news of the Chinese president arriving in Moscow.
there are 40 presidents.
Okay.
With the developing countries, and all these big presidents in Africa, some of them are there. Why isn't our president there?
If indeed there is such a big summit going on in there, I'm sure the government through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would have sent representation there. It's interesting that you raise it, because not too long ago in the social media people were talking about the president.
No, because my concern is
yes.
This one, Russia and China, they are meeting there.
Yes.
South African president is there, Paul Kagame, and some of these people. 40 presidents are there. I believe that it's very crucial where our president, I wouldn't talk about other trips too,
yes,
but I consider this one to be one of the most important trips that we didn't need to send a PS or a minister, not even a vice president. Because those 40 presidents, I'm going to meet Putin and the Chinese president, I'm sure, and all this. Why isn't our president there?
I must say on that one, I would be lying if I say I have got information on it. What I was aware of is that the Chinese president is in Russia. I didn't think there was any bigger conference on the sidelines. Because I've only seen the two of them. In fact, just before I left my base, I was looking at both of them. They were addressing the press. They were holding a media press conference. So, but if there is that invitation, I'm sure our government is participating in one way or the other. Okay. Whoever is participating in the name of the president would be doing so with the full blessings of the country.
Okay.
Sure.
Finally, which team do you support?
Soccer team. I like that. My friends would be very happy to see me having to face this question, because I'm always classified as a traitor when it comes to football, for a very simple reason that I'm not such a soccer fan. However, I'm a rugby fan. Yes, and
can I give you a team to be supported?
For rugby, please do.
No, for soccer.
For soccer, I'm happy to take the challenge.
You must be from today.
Yes.
You must be a supporter of Camnet's Stars.
Camnet Stars
Football Club.
Camnet Stars Football Club.
You should see the boys.
I'm happy to come and watch them the next time they are playing.
Chirundu, they hammered the welcome.
Okay.
The Chirundu, they hammered them 2-1.
Congratulations.
Tough.
Congratulations.
And it was so tough that you can imagine our players received 9 yellow cards. 3.
It was wafa.
Yeah, 3 red cards.
Okay.
Have you heard of them?
I saw 3 red cards yesterday.
No. Our team received
3 red cards.
Yellow cards.
Yes.
With 3 red cards.
With 3 red cards.
You include our doctor from the bench out. But the boys, 2 of them out. But we still won the game.
You were replicating a team I saw yesterday, except with them after the 3 red cards, they didn't win. That was playing against Manchester United. That was Fulham, I think.
Yeah, God was with us. Yesterday, I've never seen that kind of game.
No, congratulations to the Camnet Stars.
Yeah, no,
next time they are playing, they are hosting a team. Let me know. I'll come and watch them.
Next week, Sunday.
Okay.
Not this Sunday.
Yes.
Next week, Sunday, we are playing Young Crocs at Kablonga Boys. That's our home ground.
All right.
Kablonga Boys Secondary School.
No, please let me just be reminded. I'll come and watch them.
Honorable, you have been a blessing.
Thank you very much.
To this station. You have offloaded something that people should take. But all I can say is, Honorable, don't throw the opposition away. I appeal to President H through you. You need President Lungu. President Lungu needs UPND. All of us to develop this nation. We need one another.
Correct.
You see, where I come from, when boys were fighting, sometimes you see, honorable would beat me. You are sheepish. But it's the
people surrounding you.
It's the people that would take soil and stand on the video and say, if you are strong enough, blow this stuff.
Pampola here.
This one, Pampola, said, you are thinking, if I do, I will be hammered here. So, not to be embarrassed, go ahead. Before you know it, you are going home swallowed. So, I tend to think that the crowd, social media, and we, the people, are holding the dust between Chagwalungu and HH. I even said this, even in UPNB, I mean in PF.
Yes.
Please work with these people. I don't know. President HH will tell you that I personally had a meeting with him in the Amos Hotel way back before he became president. In the national interest that he works with President Sata. I've been appealing this, working behind the scenes. But you see, people don't like it to see Honorable MUBITA and Pastor Chiwa getting along. People don't like that. So I appeal to you, like you are appealing to your friend, Honorable Mufwaya. Kafwaya. You people are friends. You don't argue in parliament.
We argue, but we don't fight.
We don't fight.
Yes.
So, may it be transferred to the two remaining presidents.
Indeed.
Let's develop this nation.
Thank you very much, Pastor, for your kind words. I think I can only speak for what I know President HH has done. I've seen what the situation was in the past, but when President Lungu took over power, he was taking over from a president of the same political party. So maybe the lessons might be slightly different. There is a role for former presidents to play, and that role should never be in conflict with the current president, because the country is like just a like a company. When there is a new MD, the former MD goes and plays his role as former MD without wanting to act. I'm looking for the right word.
Without bringing conflict.
Without bringing conflicting issues. Yes. Because at any given time, the office holder should have the space to succeed or to fail, so that they are held responsible when they fail and they are praised when they succeed. I think President HH has given the space. It's a pity that what happened in the past sometimes crowds our interaction. But the way the political space has been opened now is indicative of the desire by the UPND government to allow the opposition to participate in the governance of the nation.
Yeah, what I'm saying, Honorable, is, you know, the crowds can bring enmity between the two.
Yes.
And from the president, former president, and the incumbent, even the words that are used towards each other, they should show statesmanship. And let's not, as people, you who work with the president, let's not incite them. And let's pray for the unity and the peace of this nation, because we have the nation to develop.
I agree.
I am saying that if you have in a move parliament.
Yes. Indeed.
Yeah. So, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Pastor.
I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful too.
The time does not permit me to read the text messages, and sincerely apologize. Maybe read them for the next person that is coming. I am so grateful to God, and I wish you success in LUENA.
Thank you very much, Pastor.
And give me a plot.
We will. I'll secure land for you. We have plenty of land available for investors.
I am coming.
So you are most welcome.
Yeah.
We have, and we are serious actually on this, because we have a serious shortage of accommodation in the Mulunga district. In the Mulunga district. Just there in Mulunga town there.
Yes.
Most of our workers, the government workers, actually stay in Mungu and they commute to their workstations in the Mulunga. So you're most welcome to come and find a piece of land in the Mulunga, develop it, help contribute to our housing stock in the district.
Tell my father, the Tunga, that you have a Bemba son from Chinsali.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, and good night, Zambia, and good night to the people of LUENA. We hope to see you soon as we close Parliament.
Amen.
Thank you.
Well, on behalf of my wife, the CEO of this great television station, on behalf of the members of staff of this station, you are the best members of staff. May God continue to bless you. And you, dear viewers, let's develop Zambia. May God bless this nation, that we become one and we develop this nation. Until next time, keep watching Kamne TV, because Kamne TV is not just another channel. Bye-bye.